everyone to the WCCC meeting Monday, October 14th at 12:01. And as you can say, Mayor Bubanek is on vacation and you get me as your illustrious leader today.
I consider it an upgrade.
Thank you, Mayor Rosner. At this time, do we have any public comment?
We did not have anybody that signed up in advance for public comment, but I'll give just a second. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to make a comment, they can use the raise hand feature. Not seeing any community members online right now, so.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and do roll call. And if you are an alternate for a member, please let us know. Stephen, I'll turn this over to you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, as usual, I'll go in city alphabetical order. So for Banks, Mayor Jones.
I am here.
Thank you. For Beaverton, I understand we have Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg standing in today.
I am.
Thank you for joining us. City of Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Present.
Thank you, sir. City of Durham, Mayor Jenke. Don't think he's on. For Hillsborough, Mayor Callaway.
Here.
Thank you. City of King City, Mayor Thompson. I don't believe has joined yet. Okay. For North Plains, Mayor Linehan.
Here.
Obviously, thank you. City of Sherwood, Mayor Rosner.
Present.
Thank you, sir. City of Tigard, Mayor Lube.
Here.
Thank you. And Mayor Bubanek is out today, and I don't believe his alternate was able to make it today either. For Wilsonville, do we have Mayor Fitzgerald? Okay, we'll keep an eye out. And for Washington County, Commissioner Fye.
Present.
Thank you. We have our non-voting members. I saw Councilor Rosenthal is with us from Metro. Thank you. For ODOT, we have Stephanie Turner. Thank you, Stephanie. We don't have a port rep, and for TriMet, I don't see a rep on yet, but we'll keep an eye out for either Tara or John Sarah to join us. Okay, I think that's our roll call.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. And bear with me here while I get my bearings. All right, action item up is the WCCC meeting summary for September 16th. Are there any changes to the minutes that we need to be aware of? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those either raise your right hand or say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. All right, moving along. All right, so we have a couple of great presentations today. Hopefully that will spark a lot of discussion. If not, some follow-up questions. First up, we have the Metro Community Connectors study, and I'm going to introduce Holmqvist. Where are you on my screen? There you are. Hi. Hi, Allie. Great. I'll go ahead and turn this over to you. Usually we have about 30 minutes to run through this, so the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen quickly. Perfect. And thank you so much for having me today. I do apologize. We're having my connection a little bit, so please let me know if I start to break up. But I am excited to talk about the Community Connector Transit study today. It is something that we've been talking about for a while now, since the last update of the Regional Transportation Plan, and that we've been working since then with your staff to shape. But first, what do we mean by community connectors? we're talking about smaller capacity transit like shuttles or vans that can be more flexible than a bus, going off route to pick up or drop off riders, to being by request wherever and whenever needed, like Uber or Lyft. And this is to address access and convenience as part of the regional transit strategy vision, thinking about expanding neighborhood and destination connections. What we're not talking about with this study, though, is regular fixed route bus or frequent bus, or the high capacity transit modes like MAX or FX bus in a moment. But what we do know is right now there's a lot of regional momentum around community connector transit. House Bill 2017 changed requirements and increased funding for local transit options, supporting new shuttle service. And more work is currently planned or underway, like Washington County's Transit Development Plan update. And of course, recent work by the county has also done countywide transit study too. So we know there's a lot of work that we can compile and build from to create a regional strategy. Speaking of plans, there's been a lot of work regionally on the other elements of the transit spectrum. So at the bottom here, the ODOT's State Rail Plan update in 2020 took a look at those intercity, outside the region connections, the high capacity transit work we just wrapped up, of course, and then the FX plan work by TriMet, focusing on the frequent express bus that's happening right now. We'll focus more on rapid bus. There is some work that's starting on a regional rail future study at Metro to look at additional passenger rail opportunities within and maybe a little bit beyond the region as well. We know too that Forward Together is being implemented now, and that TriMet is working on version 2.0, which will continue through next year, focusing on those longer term plans for frequent bus and MAX service. And so the next step really is that regional strategy for local transit, because it will consider all of this other work where services plan to think about opportunities for connections. And this is also something that we heard clearly from community as a need during the 2023 RTP update from many of you in this room too. And I actually will skip, just because my internet connection is a little unstable. There's a video on the website that I'll skip today, sharing Elise's story as one of those examples. But in your packet, there's also a summary of the public feedback that we've heard to date that's summarized in the Wordle on the slide. But what we did hear is concern about areas that lack access to the network today and in the future, but where there might be opportunities to make connections when thinking about something other than bus service. And we heard from you that it's important to think about the suburban and urban edge communities, serving jobs and also essential destinations, connecting to existing frequent transit, providing mobility hubs at key connection points to support multimodal trips, both transit and other types of modes, and then coordinating resources, investments, and implementation. So then what we're doing as part of the work on this study is, first, we're going to gather a lot of context about what exists today and all of those plans for the future by partners as well. Compile lessons learned, explore challenges and opportunities, and then also best practice approaches in other places. Also, we can understand the best uses for these tools as part of the regional network. And then we want to apply that understanding to add on to the policy framework that's been established by our foundational regional plans, the 2040 growth concept, that regional transportation plan, and regional transit strategy. And those envision bus along most arterial streets. And then we want to explore the best way to incorporate additional coverage in more local area neighborhoods and connecting to more destinations aligned with our regional goals for equity, economy, and climate. And then using that framework as a guide, we'll want to update the regional transit network vision map, which currently includes community jobs connectors that are sort of the blobby areas in tan on this map. These were originally identified in TriMet's service enhancement plans, which we know Forward Together 2.0 will be updating. And at the same time, other regional work for the RTP as part of the emerging technology strategy, by corridor planning. And then actually right now at the same time, our RTO team is working on transportation demand management strategy update as well. There's a lot of more work that's been done with looking at more service feasibility assessments, and providing more information about where this type of transit might be feasible. We also know that local agencies have done their own transit development plans, including the plans I mentioned for Washington County, thinking about additional service to meet needs. So there's a lot basically that we can do to update this map based on that work. And then when we have that additional context, thinking about the vision through a new lens will help us find new opportunities and think about the vision in a new way, aligned with some of that best practices, thinking about how connections can fan out beyond the current network. That will include thinking about, again, those locations where lots of transit modes, but also other modes like walking, bicycling, and micromobility come together in a hub, and how we can leverage that to support more comfortable, convenient connections. And then lastly, we want to think about where these opportunities are most needed and ready to deploy first, consistent with regional goals. So that's less a pipeline and more just guidance to think about near versus later term investments for the next RTP update. And also thinking about transportation system plans that are going to be happening over the life of this study, and also those transit development plan updates too. And we also want to just be thinking about being competitive for emerging grant opportunities that we're now seeing come out of EPA and ODOT that can also provide resources for this tool. We also want to create a suite of tools to support that updated vision. So a final report that outlines a list of regional implementation actions that we can take together. Those will touch on governance, funding, and how we can grow transit through the spectrum into those from the smaller to the larger capacity tools. We want to develop a mobility hub toolkit that will outline features and actions and sort of a strategy based on the area context, which will look a little bit different towards the center of the region versus outside or to the edges of the region. We'll be developing a regional parks transit development strategy, outlining how these tools could create transit access to key destination park sites in the future. We also want to develop a transit supportive land use plan checklist that will complement the transportation checklist we developed during the high capacity transit work to ensure that our plans are transit ready. And then finally, sub-area action plan booklets that'll highlight key elements of the strategy and recommendations by county, really thinking about supporting that local work to update transportation system plans and those transit plans. A transit working group, including all the partners shown here, will support this work, and we'll be having touch points with the Metro committees and also offering, as space allows, previews to the county coordinating committees for each milestone. We'll also be presenting to existing community advisory committees and business organizations. And then we're going to have another set of contracts with community-based organizations to hold small group interviews and focus group events as well. We're also working on a similar plan for tribal engagement that we'll have more on soon. And of course, surveys for broader outreach on the website. And then we're also working with your staff to identify some in-person tabling events throughout the region as well. All of the work I just highlighted is organized into these general key milestones that'll be the touch points for the work for engagement. And the timeline that you can see here ending in spring 2026 is aligned with the start of the next regional transportation plan update. So coming up next, we'll be talking about the context and policy framework this next spring, the assessment and vision next summer, talking about those priorities and tools next fall, and then finally the report and recommended actions in the spring of 2026. And I provided ahead of time some information about the website that we have up with fact sheets as resources for anyone that you know that's interested in learning more about this work. But before the next milestone in April, we'll be working with the working group on key deliverables for that touch point. We're going to talk with transit providers about the current environment and lessons learned, release a public survey to hear more about those destination connection needs, and then start those community and agency advisory committee meetings as well. So thank you for listening to this overview today. I sent ahead a few questions that I can post in the chat to get started, but otherwise I'm going to stop sharing so I can hear your input for me.
Great. Thank you, Allie, for that update. I don't believe that we have chat. Is that correct, Stephen?
That's correct. Yeah, we have chat disabled.
Okay. So we do have Mayor Rosner. His hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. A couple questions. You've probably heard my position on our inability, at least in the Sherwood area, our inability to get people from home to their jobs and back, and any kind of transit solution today. I kind of along those lines, I'm curious how that working group you put together, I didn't see cities represented on there. It was counties and the current providers. It feels like we need, especially edge community cities, represented in that working group as we have these conversations. Otherwise, I think we're just looking at optimizing existing networks, and we don't get that perspective in there, especially for South Washington County. I have a feeling my friend from Cornelius might echo some of that. But I think that's an important part of this conversation. And then the second question I have is, how are you incorporating what's happening around the metro region? You know, like we have a lot, you know, we have some transit systems that come out of Yamhill County and connect up into our area, not to mention the huge influx of workers that are being pushed out of the metro area into the surrounding areas and are now having to come back from their homes to get to their jobs. So I'm just curious how we're addressing that as well. So 2 questions, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. For the first one, for the working group, yes, you're right. It does include the county representatives as representatives. We are planning on incorporating additional staff in a couple of ways. We are meeting with the County Coordinating Committee TAX. So they actually saw this presentation a little while ago, and we, of course, as time allows, plan to keep coming back for each milestone to be able to make sure that we incorporate that perspective. We also are planning on some additional meetings. We're holding those transit provider workshops. Those are a little bit broader. So in the region on our inventory, which is getting a little bit to your second question as well. But at the second one where we talk about mobility hubs, especially, we're going to be including those providers from outside the region. And then in the meantime, I'm also looking at ways to have some separate conversations to bring those folks in. So I've already been talking about C4 has the Clackamas staff actually have a meeting where they convene the outside providers. So that one's a little bit of an easier low-hanging fruit because I'm going to be talking with them. But I'm going to be working with the working group representatives to see how we can also do the same thing for Washington and Multnomah counties. To gather those other providers in. So I think there's a couple different, they're not on the working group to answer the question directly inside the region. And then the second question was, how are we going to look at beyond the providers, just all the things that those providers are doing in the region? We are working on an inventory as the first step to just get a handle on where those services are provided so that we can include that in the analysis. And so when we do the assessment, we are going to be looking at where some of these smaller providers are currently providing service, and then also some of that demand that we're seeing on the edges. I will say that we will be using, of course, mainly the Metro model and some of the ridership information that we have. So we'll be a little bit more limited to looking at that mostly in the region and not outside in a big way, but that is going to be considered as part of the study.
Yeah, I think it's important that you have cities represented in the core group. So it'd be great if you could take that back. And then just one last quick thing, a plea. Please do scientific polling, not the email shared polling that goes out, because I don't think that accurately reflects what communities are actually looking for because of the way those polls are shared. Anyways, thank you for all of that and great presentation. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Rosenthal and then Mayor Delane.
I would defer to Mayor Delane first. He probably has a better question.
All right, Mayor, you're up.
No pressure, no pressure. I'm going to second Tim's point is I think you need more cities representation because we're really kind of webbing this all together, right? You have my commute, though it's small, is Cornelius through almost most of Hillsborough, just even to get to an Intel site, which is a major employer. So I think getting some more cities on there because we're going to provide those interconnections because we also need to talk about what are the plans, right? Or do we have bikeways? Do we have different trails that we're planning to really foster so that we get that all on one plan system? And without the cities being representative, I think you'll get some of the technical, but you also need some of the policy folks to talk to you about that. I'm curious because what I'm seeing emerge from electrification of non-traditional vehicles. What are you guys thinking micromobility is? Because I'm seeing the near death-defying acts of people riding e-scooters down Cornell, which is 35 to 45 miles an hour. And I'm not sure which e-scooter you get that gets you up to 30 and 40 miles an hour, but some of them are doing it on those little tiny wheels. And I've been nearly the first person at the scene of the accident for a couple of the e-scooter people trying to ride down Cornell amongst the traffic. And that includes people on one wheel, which is electric also, e-bikes that are going at, doesn't look like the state mandated speed. I'm really concerned that maybe we're almost coming late to the game on the electrification on some of this stuff and how it's interacting. And then I think, I don't know if Tim really covered it, but also the leap, right? You guys have heard me talk about it before. We've squeezed down the donut to try to keep this urban center, but all the workers have leapt out, right? They're coming in from Yamhill, Newburgh. I just got the chance to go to the Vancouver waterfront and look at all the Oregon license plates there and meet all of my Intel coworkers that were dining in downtown Vancouver. So I think we got to look at some of that. And it's I do like the idea though of going smaller and using the smaller buses to get around. We've already got Grove Link out here. It's expanding into Cornelius. So I really think that is a way to get the transportation to the people. So if there's people that can use the transportation system instead of using it as an individual, as a group, I think that's really great. I just think we need to kind of get our plans work together on it. So what if you could answer the micromobility though, what do you guys consider the range of micromobility?
Yes, so we're thinking about micromobility. We're thinking about those kind of shared systems, the sort of bike shares that exist, the e-bikes, the scooters. It goes a little bit further because some of the mobility hubs are also providing spaces for Uber and Lyft connections. And then we've also seen in some of the work on region, there's more of a focus on park and rides as well, knowing that there are some gaps when the further out you go that people are driving, but then they can connect in. So those are all things that we're going to consider as part of the mobility hubs. And that's really why we want to have the context specific typology to be thinking about when we're looking at maybe a rural hub versus an urban center, the differences.
And maybe this is a good place for Allie to get this feedback from us on the mayors here. Portland has bike share, scooters, that kind of stuff. Does anybody else have those programs on this line?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not.
Tigard is the one, the only
Tigard.
one I've heard of, I think, in this group. A small shared system.
So I think that's part of what we're looking at, Allie, is this is bike share and in scooter share and all that. That's really neat if you're downtown Portland. But the only place you find them in East County is in the river or in the lake or in the creek. You don't see them out. I don't know. Did Beaverton or Beaverton rep, or is there any sharing going on in Beaverton for bikes or scooters? Any of the micro stuff?
No, not outside of the Nike campus.
Right, because Nike bought the bikes and then encouraged their, yeah. So I think, Allie, that's part of what we're looking at, right? It just doesn't exist anywhere else. It's a neat idea for downtown, but everybody else is still, if you're on an e-scooter or an e-bike, it's yours. I mean, I've got a pedal assist bike, but I use it for commuting around Cornelius. I don't use it to get to Hillsborough or anywhere else, maybe Forest Grove. So just some food for thought for you. So I think we need to understand out of the entire audience which parts of these pieces apply to, maybe.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple good comments. I agree. I see these e-scooters and bikes all over Tualatin in strange places, sort of left by the side of the road. I don't know if it's a shared program, but they seem to wander off. And the same concern is they're trying to zipping in and out of traffic on roads that probably they don't belong. But I have a question: is at what point are we going to define the sub-regional needs and the sub-regional conditions that are separate? For example, I mean, Sherwood is not going to have there's going to be a sub-regional program for community connections in the Sherwood area, and that'll probably include Tualatin, and it may include Wilsonville, I don't know, but it's not going to include Gresham, Troutdale. And the same thing is true as Forest Grove and Cornelius. It'll include Hillsborough, but it's probably not going to include Oregon City. So and as you said, Ollie, I mean, it's a good presentation, but as you said, they all have different demographics. At what point is the group going to define specific needs or special needs for each area, each sub area?
Thank you. That's a great question. There's a couple ways or a couple things I want to highlight. One is that the local partners and staff in this room actually have done a lot of that already. We're really thankful, actually, that Washington County has done so much work on this already that we can pull from. It ranges a little bit in our region. It's a little bit different in some other places about how much work has been done. So I will say that there has been work done here already that we get to leverage. But what we want to do with this study is then add to it. So we want to do some initial assessment regionally first as part of this study, really over next summer. And then one of the outcomes that we do want to have around the fall, late 2025 timeframe is that sub-regional county look, because we understand that Washington County has done so much work, and we've talked with the staff about this, and we want to be able to help take that to the next level. And so that's something that we want to do closely with actually all of your staff to help move forward, because since there has been so much work done, we want to see basically how we can take some of the actions that have already been defined in the countywide study and the work that's been done to update the transit development plan and add on. I think one place that we're hoping to have some additional information, especially, is we've been getting a lot of requests to look at funding. So that's one key thing that we'll be looking at as part of this work. But I think to answer your question, is really, we are planning on doing that, but we won't have too much information to share until late 2025 on the specifics.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions from the group? All right, see none. Ollie, thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day. And if you are just joining us, I believe Councilor Gonzalez and maybe Mayor Fitzgerald, Mayor Bubenik is on vacation. And so you have me as your illustrious leader today. All right, next up, we have the TV Highway Transit Project Implementation Strategy. And I'm going to introduce Jess Zadeb from Metro and Dave Aulwes from TriMet. And I certainly hope I said your last name correctly, Dave.
I think you said it the way most people say it.
Okay, could you pronounce it for me though?
It's Aulwes. It's got a few too
Aulwes.
many vowels in it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you and Jess then. Thank you.
Great, and I can go ahead and share the slides, and Dave, you can just tell me when you would like to advance since you're going to be taking the first part of this.
Okay. All right. Well, I will say we gave this presentation to the TAC. I want to say just a little over a week ago. And Jason did a great job while Jess was out, and he actually did the front end of these slides. Jess, I'm sorry to say. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I wasn't prepared to talk about the front end up to essentially the updates. Is that okay with you?
Sure. Yep, I'm happy to do any part of these.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for having us here today. My name is Jess Zadeb. I'm a principal regional planner at Metro. And for the last 2 years, I've been the project manager for our work on TV Highway, working really closely with Dave and the team at TriMet. So we're back today to give just a quick overview of the project, an update on the work that we've done over especially the last year or so in updating our design and costing. Talk a little bit about the engagement effort that we just completed yesterday, and then a quick update on the engagement, the equitable development strategy as well. So, as I hope many of you know, and especially those who are members of this committee who are also on our steering committee, we are working together to improve safety and the travel experience on TV Highway. What we're studying is a change to TriMet's Line 57, which is the bus that runs from downtown Beaverton all the way along TV Highway through Hillsborough, unincorporated Washington County, Cornelius, and Forest Grove. Many of you on this call have seen planning efforts over the years on TV Highway conducted by Washington County, the jurisdictions along the corridor, ODOT, Metro. We're really hoping that this is a planning effort that results in changes on the ground. And to that end, our plan is that we would be moving forward with hopefully a project with federal funding from the FTA. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the context of the Line 57. TV Highway has been on our high injury corridors list for the region since we started that work. And in fact, 2 segments are on the top 25 worst parts of the corridors for the region. There are also several intersections that make the cut for our high injury intersections in that analysis. We know that a fairly high number of those fatalities also are people who are walking, and some of them certainly are accessing transit. The Line 57 today has the most daily boardings in Washington County. It's over 6,000 daily boardings. And the line also has bounced back to about 90% of pre-COVID ridership, and that is the highest bounce back for any bus line in the TriMet system. It's a line that people really rely on. As you can see with the photo of this gentleman here, in Aloha, many stops don't have shelter, seating, or lighting. And in fact, there are a couple along the highway where this is the case, where you are waiting for the bus at the same grade as the roadway, which really presents both a perceived and actual safety risk. Additionally, the bus can take up to twice as long as driving, and we know that that doesn't really work for folks when they're using the bus to get to appointments or jobs. or dropping their kids off at daycare. So we want to make sure that this project also addresses those speed and reliability issues. So what we're proposing on TV Highway is a frequent express project. As Allie mentioned in her proposal, this is in that high capacity transit band of being service and infrastructure that is of a higher level than just a frequent TriMet bus line, which is what's out there today. So a project on TV Highway, also a lot of these features are in response to the requirements that the Federal Transit Administration has for a bus rapid transit project. So these features would include every location in the corridor having a station, and we use the word station to denote the fact that these are, as you can see from the photo at the bottom, more robust places to wait for the bus than a stop. So you'll notice us using that word station instead of stop. Every station would have a shelter, lighting, seating. They could have trash receptacles, and they would have an elevated platform that would have people not waiting at the roadway grade. The project would also have transit signal priority throughout the entire corridor, and a couple places in the corridor where there would be physical improvements to allow the bus to get through a transit signal or to have its own lane shared with right turns. Every station in the corridor would have a crossing, whether that's an existing crossing, one that is at a signal, one that ODOT is planning to add to the corridor, or one that would be added by this project. Stations would be at locations throughout the corridor that we're identifying to optimize that stop spacing. Right now, stop spacing in the corridor is actually tighter in some places than if TriMet were to build this line today. So we would change up where the stops are located. And then it's anticipated that the bus would also have all door boarding to speed up the time that the bus spends at every station. Project is guided by 3 committees, a technical and policy working group at the staff level, and then the steering committee, of which we've got a couple members on this phone call today. Been a lot of great partnership across the entire set of years that we've been working on this project together. So what have we done so far? Dave, do you want to take it from here?
Yep, I can jump in here. Thank you, Jess. So I know a number of you have been paying attention and are on our steering committee, so you're pretty aware of where we're at. But just to get everybody else caught up, I believe the last time we talked to you was last November, so it's almost been a year. But since then, we've been pretty busy. Our first round of design was sort of coming to a close when we presented to you, I believe. And we had a pretty big project that came in about $550 million. And everybody on our committee agreed that that's a little too big given the funding opportunity that we have here. Just to make you familiar with that, we are expecting to use federal funding for this, and it would be a capital investment grant program and small starts grant in particular. Those grants are limited to about $150 million match. So about a $300 million project is where we want to be. And this was quite a bit outside of that target range. We spent some time talking to our steering committee about how we might be able to get the cost down. We looked at phasing options. Would we maybe split the line in Hillsborough? Are there some other things we could do to try and cut costs? Maybe the bus continues, but the actual capital improvement is only in a certain segment. The steering committee came back to us and pretty clearly said this really needs to be a corridor-long project. The ridership is really strong along the length of it. There's a lot of destinations that cross a point that would be a break in that line. And, you know, truthfully, inducing a transfer is not a way to improve service. And so I think we're in agreement with that. But that gave us a big challenge. And that was, how do we get this cost down and in a more feasible range? And so that's what we've been doing since we last talked with you. During that first round, we actually did identify draft station locations, and I'll talk a little bit about the refinement of those as well in the next round. Next slide. So round 2 design picked up last time early winter. So we looked at a couple different scenarios for design. One that would be federally eligible, but ODOT was really interested in trying to understand, could we actually do just a locally funded project for even less cost? And so that is something that we took on, and we decided we'd try and understand that. As Jess had mentioned, the federal project requires a certain level of amenity at each station stop. So, for example, a shelter would need to be included even at those lowest ridership stops where we know that we need to have a station of some sort. But you might only have, 20 or so people a day. And that's below a threshold where TriMet would typically provide a shelter. But the federal project would require a shelter. And that's a nice amenity. But that is a place that we could save money. So we looked at a number of different scenarios where we could try and pull cost out. And as we advanced that effort and kind of clarified how we were going to approach that, we worked pretty closely with ODOT as well as with our estimating team. And we got down to about a $150 million project that we could make work locally. Our steering committee was pretty clear that they were thinking, $150 million, local money, couldn't we just go after a federal grant and use that as match money and get a $300 million project built? And we said, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And so the steering committee voted unanimously to move forward with the capital investment grant program so we could double our local money. So let me jump to the next one here. So a little bit about the station location process. This is just one example of the kind of data that we used for the station optimization work. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're hitting all those high ridership stops. Any kind of transfers, there's quite a few crossing lines out here. Ride Connection is also making connections. And we also have a lot of good data on where riders are using mobility devices. We know when the ramp gets deployed on the bus every time, and so we can see where those locations are. And that's what this map is actually showing, is the number of lifts or wheelchair lifts happening. And the other thing that, of course, we're hearing is, what are the community identified, locations that we really need to serve, grocery stores, things like that. Let's go to the next one here. And so this is the resulting map of the station locations. We're around about a 1/3 mile average spacing in here. Previous to that, it was a little under a 1/4, I believe. You'll see there's a little blob there in Cornelius. Jess is going to talk a little bit about the public process, and that is one of the specific questions that we're asking of the community in Cornelius. What stations make the most sense, or station makes the most sense in Cornelius? Let's go to the next one. So I think Jess already covered a few of these things, but I'm gonna reiterate. So this project is hanging on to all of those important safety benefits that the round one design developed. Okay, so we were able to find ways to save money, but this is not where the cost savings came from. And let me just mention the previous round one was trying to reduce the speed of the roadway to some degree so that we could actually have in-lane buses, and that resulted in quite a bit more construction. It also tried to do some access management and some other things that would have been beneficial to the corridor and the overall. Some of those things we felt could get removed without major consequence, but the core safety elements, crossings, like the one you're seeing here, this is Division Transit, kind of near the ODOT interchange of 82nd Avenue, or excuse me, 205. And so there's a few other things that we're hanging on to in the TV highway project that we think are fundamental. So these enhanced crossings at every station. So that's either a traffic signal, a rapid flashing beacon, or a hawk signal, or in some cases, a crosswalk where you've just got 2 lanes of traffic within the couplet areas. The partial pullout stop design is being eliminated. I'm not sure everybody knows what that is, so let me explain. So the bus in many places right now actually pulls into the bike lane. The bike lane is about 6 foot wide. It would block that bike lane, but it also blocks half of the travel lane. And in our analysis, we're seeing a lot of rear end and kind of sideswipe accidents out there. And our sense is that these partial pullouts create some ambiguity whether a driver can actually get by. Drivers think they can, and then they try to squeeze through, and an accident occurs. And so this project is committed to either having the bus fully out of lane or the bus fully in lane, and ideally not in conflict with cyclists. The other thing that the project is committed to doing is providing station platforms with curbs and waiting areas. Now, that doesn't seem like a significant thing until you've been on TV highway, and you'll note that an awful lot of stops adjacent to the railway don't have curbs. And so this is really about improving the safety and the dignity of our riders and how they can access this service. Next one, please. So stations, just mentioned this, lighting, shelters, on-time arrival information. These are things that the FTA would require. They're things that we love to be able to provide to our riders. They really appreciate these amenities. And of course, increased speed and reliability through transit signal priority, and where we can potentially get some queue jumps combined with those right turn pockets. Each of the station locations is going to benefit from access to and from the station for people using mobility devices. So these are all new curb ramps and crossings that meet current ADA standards. And then we would also like to bring out zero emission buses. TriMet has a goal of transforming our fleet by 2040 to be all zero emission. And this is a good opportunity for us to bring those zero emission buses to the TV highway corridor and benefit TV highway and the riders there immediately. Next one. And then this is sort of the big news that we recently heard. So currently TV highway is 15-minute service. Our FX system plan has prompted this question at TriMet, and we are rolling out a system plan, and TV highway has been inspiring that system plan, and TriMet has committed to 12-minute service on FX lines throughout the region. So TV highway would benefit from that. Next slide. So our project, as I've alluded, is just a little under $300 million right now, which is really exciting. So we did manage to get that cost down, and we think we've got a viable project. So that's exciting. And I'll just reiterate, because I think it helps people to remember. The key project elements remain elimination of those partial pullout stop designs and improving the interaction between bike and bus. Lots of nice station amenities. We have a total of 41 station pairs. I think, as I haven't mentioned it actually prior to this, but we still have Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way challenges with the stations that are currently along TV highway, and with this project will resolve that problem. There are 4 significant intersection rebuilds that result from this project, and that's a combination of having buses in pullouts adjacent to the UPRR in locations where our collaboration with ODOT indicated that because of safety reasons or capacity of the roadway reasons, that having buses out of lane would make a lot of sense. It also includes 15 new vehicles, some chargers, and bus facility upgrades. I will mention that there's a concurrent project happening at Beaverton Transit Center to pay for and build 2 of the chargers that we'll need, and to modify the transit center to accommodate the positions that we would need as well. So that's being dealt with through a separate funding source. We also have 59 signal upgrades along the corridor to accommodate transit signal priority. That, of course, includes continuous fiber. And I think that's all I've got to share with you. Jess, can I pass it back to you?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So as Dave mentioned, we have gotten the project cost down to around $300 million. But we recognize that, that's still $150 million in local share to match our hoped for grant from the FTA. So this shows how we think that local share will be filled by partners. This is very slightly out of date. I can say now that first tranche at the bottom, the regional number, is $36 million. So that's $1 million in just regional corridor funding, another 5 from the carbon reduction program, which was allocated to this corridor about 2 years ago. That's federal money. And then we are hopeful that this project will also garner funds from the RUFA Step 1A bond funding. This corridor requested a $30 million contribution from RUFA. Next in the line up, the bar chart is a request to the legislature, which would be the state contribution. We're still working on what the strategy is as to how that request is made. We know that ODOT is really supportive of bringing funding to this corridor and to this project, and is really helping us strategize about what's the best way to describe this project to the legislature and kind of how it fits into the overall picture. So that is a key and really necessary piece of how the funding strategy works for this project, and something that we're targeting for this this upcoming session. Then obviously TriMet is a major player in the funding of this project, as well, as they are the operator of the bus line, and then the balance would be filled by local partners. So that's the county and the 4 cities. And all of these numbers are kind of provisional at this point. We've started initial conversations with each of the project funding partners about specific numbers that we, don't have firm commitments from everyone, but I think that we, as a project team, think that, discussions are going well, and we're optimistic about finding a path forward to get to that necessary local match. So how are we progressing this project? Right now, we have just closed our outreach and engagement window, which I'll talk about. We've got budget discussions and thoughts ongoing at each of the local jurisdictions for PD funding. PD is project development, which is the first stage that we enter into with the Federal Transit Administration. So those are allocations that would need to be committed in FY26 budgets for us to enter PD next year. As I noted, we'll be talking to the legislature and figuring out exactly what the strategy is for this project and garnering funds from them. Our hope is that in early 2025, our steering committee recommends a LPA approval. That's the locally preferred alternative, which would identify basically the outlines of this project. And eventually that comes back to Metro for approval, because it takes a formal step to amend the regional transportation plan to include this project. Overall, the longer term timeline for the project looks like this. We are planning, as I said, to enter project development with FTA next summer. There are a couple interim steps along the way that FTA requires at various stages of design development. Construction could start in spring of 2028, and then if all of our stars align, we would be hoping to see revenue service open in fall of 2030. I mentioned this a couple times. We've just concluded on Sunday, closed our fall survey, which was open for about 5 weeks. The key question is those transit stations. Dave shared a draft map with you, and it's draft because we need to hear from the community about how they feel those station locations would serve them. In particular, in Cornelius, we asked about station locations because we couldn't kind of within staff and leadership get to an agreement about what the best location or locations were without that community feedback. So we'll be nailing those down and looking at our survey responses over the next month or so and getting to that draft LPA by December. I'm really excited. We had over 1,000 responses to the survey. And we got the word out in numerous ways, and big thanks to TriMet for funding some onboard surveyors who really helped get those numbers up in the latter half of the engagement window. So slightly out of date because we always have to submit our slides ahead of time, but we're now over 1,000 responses. Folks can sign up for a newsletter for ongoing information about the project. As I noted, this is a project that will come back to Metro eventually for inclusion in the RTP, but each jurisdiction in the corridor will also have the project LPA go through their own legislative processes. So we anticipate in the springtime, we would be presenting to city councils, the county board, and then other advisory committees that help those bodies make decisions about projects like this. And then obviously community engagement doesn't end with this stage. As TriMet picks the project up in project development, there are a lot more conversations that are had about design details. That's really where conversations start happening with individual property and business owners along the corridor. So there's a lot more conversation that happens before we get to that construction stage in 2028. And I'll just close with a really quick update on the equitable development strategy, because that's the other arm of this project. The organizations you see here on the screen are those who comprise the TEC, the TV Highway Equity Coalition. They drafted and finalized an equitable development strategy last year that identifies community needs for stability in the face of a large investment like this in the corridor. What they are up to now is working toward implementation of that strategy. That body doesn't have ongoing funding for pursuing implementation. Both Metro and Unite Oregon, as the leader of that coalition, have pursued different funding sources to help that along. And we actually I know with letters of support from several of your jurisdictions, Metro again submitted a federal grant application to USCOT for more planning funding for this body. Right now, they're operating with short-term funding from a 2040 Planning and Development grant from Metro that Washington County Economic Development staff are leading. And the goal of that is really further community engagement by the TEC and further connections between the Equity Coalition and government partners to figure out where there's alignment or lack of alignment in existing projects and programs to achieve those outcomes that community identified in the EDS. So that's all we have for you. I will stop sharing and we're happy to take any questions about whatever part of this folks have them about.
All right, Jess, Dave, thank you so much for your presentation. And I just have a quick question, clarifying question. I know line 57 is extremely well used, and when I drive down TV Highway, I cringe when I see people, moms and babies on the side of the street waiting for a bus. And so I'm really excited to see that there will be potentially some new platforms and stops for families to be able to, and folks to be able to utilize. So I'm really excited about that. Just a quick question is TriMet responsible for the maintenance of each one of those stops, from replacement to garbage to you name it?
So there's interesting lines of responsibility. So shelters, platforms, yes. But bike facilities leading up to, bike facilities departing, that would be ODOT. We will provide a trash container. I'm not certain what our agreements are about trash pickup. And so that may be something that gets dealt with in an IGA. I know that that's sort of an ongoing thing that sometimes the communities like to take so that they have more control over it. And generally we're supportive of that. So I think a few of those things need to be kind of worked out. TriMet does, manage the lighting of the stations and the pylon. But for example, we wouldn't do the area street lighting. That's owned by ODOT or owned by the jurisdiction. So there's an interesting kind of mix of different things, but this isn't the first time we've done this. And so we can find our way through it pretty easily, I believe.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. We just don't have TriMet in North Plains, and it's a question that I've often wondered about. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mayor Wenzel and then Mayor Callaway.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Jess and Dave. And thank you to the TV Highway Steering Committee led by Councilor Gonzalez. I was on there and I've been staying tuned. It's a lot of work and a lot of people that care about the safety of people using TV Highway. So I'm glad to see this project progressing. My question is, I'm just going to be pretty pointed and cut to the chase. So with the local match, how are we, there's 4 cities in Washington County. So I'm just wondering if Metro's figured out how or when will cities know their portion that they're going to be asked to pay? And then my other question is a follow-up question. For the city of Forest Grove has scaffolded, I mean, can you, I think you're not muted, Justin. I don't know if you were typing. Okay, thanks. But so we have a scaffold project with $26 million worth of improvements to TV highway. And so I'm just wondering, like, when will cities know what their portion is? And then can cities, so we're basically really going to have to cooperatively work with Metro, the state, our city. We got a great, we got some funding, federal funding from Representative Bonamici, but I'm wondering if we can use any of these dollars, Safe Routes to School, to go towards our match, our local match. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mayor. And for you and your staff's ongoing work with us on this. We have shared numbers with staff already in all 5 jurisdictions in the corridor. So those conversations have already started at the staff level. So they're well aware of that. And then in terms of match, yeah, we're aware of the earmark that came in, and that will actually be a really complementary investment to what is planned in the corridor. And yes, that could be part of our match. There is a cap on federal portion of the project at 80%. And the amount of federal spending in the project total budget does impact our score with FTA, but we're not terribly worried about that right now. So I know every individual jurisdiction is working on figuring out how they fulfill the current ask, and none of those asks are settled at this point. I think they're still moving around, but the general scale of which of all of those asks is definitely known by staff at each jurisdiction at this point.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Mayor Callaway.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. I appreciate the 12-minute service. Beyond just bus commuters, if you are low income and this is your form of transportation, it just takes so much more time when you're poor to travel, to go shopping, to do any sort of just activities that the rest of us do, who are more independent. So thank you for just more often travel times. Curious, an assumption here, but the proposed locations, if wherever it's located on the eastbound side, I'm assuming it will be located on the westbound side at basically the same area, so people aren't having to basically cross TV highway in areas where there aren't clear delineations for crossing. So I don't know if there's an answer for that since these are all proposed, but I just hope that they are closely matched from one side of TV highway to the other.
That is correct. That's a good assumption to make. Yes,
Okay.
we don't want to induce any more walking distance than necessary, and we recognize that a person that's picking up the bus is probably going to get off at that same location when they get home.
Yep, perfect. Okay. With the 300 million, has there been inflationary factors figured into this? Because if it sits at 300 million today, we know it's going to be over 300 million tomorrow,
Yes.
or certainly down the road a year from now.
Yes, no, escalation is a big consideration. This project has been escalated out to 2030.
Okay.
And so it is escalated as if we're going to get the thing built, and that those monies are going to be, yes, that much more inflation between now and then. Of course, I believe we're estimating about 3.5% beyond this current year. This last couple of years have been much higher than that, of course. So
sure.
Yep.
And then recognizing that some of the funding is coming from ODOT, how are conversations with ODOT going? Because we know they are strapped, and strapped is a kinder word, I think, than I guess, and they might consider using it. I mean, they're hurting a lot and are just going back to core services. So do we, I guess, so how are those conversations going?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mayor, and recognizing the tough straits that they're in right now. They will have their own ask to the legislature for their own operations and funding. I think everyone's been really clear about the fact that it's not only their facilities and their money that needs to be in a legislative package. So I think we've been getting having really helpful conversations with ODOT about how, as I said, to structure the ask of this inclusion in any conversations about the legislative package. We're still hearing loud and clear that that package is based on programs and not necessarily projects. And so figuring out what aspects of this project fit into those high priority programs that are going to be part of a package. As we talked about, a lot of this has to do with safety. We know that there will probably be a request to increase the Great Streets program at the state level, and that is a good fit for this corridor. So we're still working out exactly where this project fits in terms of that strategy. But I will say that ODOT really does want to see investment in this corridor, and so they've been very, very supportive of figuring out how to make this part of the package.
Very good. And if there's any sort of follow-up that can be done just because of the recent TriMet, or I'm sorry, joint committee, that toured TV Highway, clear down into Cornelius and up into Aulwes and Beaverton. It seems like this is a great time just to hit them with reminders over and over. And I recognize the only thing worse than mansplaining is mayor-splaining, so I don't mean it to sound like that, but I just think that there's still good opportunities to circle back. Thank you.
Agreed, and Councilor Gonzalez is cooking up some ideas about that himself in terms of outreach to the entire state delegation in the corridor.
Very good. Let us know how we can support those and be involved in that.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to celebrate you, Jessica, Jess, and Councilor Juan Carlos around your leadership, and also TriMet, your leadership on this committee as a member representing the Board of Washington County Commissioners. I really think that you did a great job of not only bringing the county, working closely with the staff and bringing our board along, but also bringing the cities along to this project and really going, in my opinion, beyond the level of services and education you provide for committees. So I just want to appreciate you and celebrate you thus far. And I know that the celebration will come once we get the money. But I think we have a lot to celebrate because the first day we started this project and reviewing the number of stops, deteriorating stops that really exist, unsafe stops that really exist, and honing on and centering the committee to really focus on the ultimate goal or the desired outcome for this project is really to save lives. So making us really just hone in on the safety element of the project. You did a really phenomenal job, and I just want to celebrate you that. And then in terms of your, this project and the tour that Mayor Callaway mentioned, that tour, I feel like people walked away not only knowing TV Highway, but also knowing the success that exists in that, some of the improvement element in terms of that happened since we started the project versus how far we have to go. I feel like people walked away knowing so much about TV Highway, the improvements in progress and the improvements to come. So congratulations on that. And congratulations to you and to Juan Carlos. Anybody, I think it's safe to say that one of the things that kept repeating, anybody that mentioned deteriorating state highways, TV highway kept coming back, kept coming back. So I think it's a win, I would say, since the last stop was at Washington County, and people really we honed in on TV highway. So I think not to celebrate before we actually get the fundings, but congratulations. I think Ron Winsheimer did a really fantastic job of centering TV highway in that tour. So I agree with Mayor Callaway. Let's keep the pressure on to really reiterate that we need the dollar to match that now.
Thank you. Mayor Delane.
I'd be remiss not to bring up my concern about the money. We haven't set up a bottle drop account for it yet, but that's, you know, what we're looking at in Cornelius. But yeah, it's my concern is so much of this hinges on the state legislature coming through, right, for the match money, really. So not really a question, more of a statement that I don't know, maybe the staff can respond. What's our plan B if the legislature doesn't come through with the golden egg to match for the cities? What's the next plan to support that money?
Valid question. I mean, that's where we have to start with hoping that works out. We have not drafted a bunch of different scenarios yet about what would be the next step. Obviously, there is a short session after this long one, and then there's another long one in 2 years. The challenge with that becomes, as Mayor Callaway noted, the project gets more expensive every year that it gets pushed out. And so that at that point, we really would have to be thinking about ways to take pieces of the project out that are, at this point, we feel that what we've got as a project is about as streamlined as it possibly can be to meet the goals of all of the project partners in the corridor and to meet the requirements from the FTA. So I think that there's a significant challenge if that comes to pass. But you know, we've dealt with some pretty big challenges to this project so far. But yes, Mayor Delane, I think that that's incumbent upon us as staff to come back to the steering committee in one of our next meetings with you with a couple of just statements about where we would head if that legislative funding doesn't come through within this long session.
All right, and we just have a couple minutes left. I'm going to call on Mayor Rosner.
I'll make this real quick. Jess and everybody involved, just want to commend your work. You know, I tell my staff all the time, you got to be grant ready if you want to get the funds, and that's the work you're doing, and that's amazing. I have to say, I look forward to having the same conversation about 99 West here shortly. Got to get that plug in.
Not a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Last minute, anyone else? All right, Jess and Dave, thanks again for the presentation, and I couldn't echo it more. Safety is number one, and so I'm really excited that this is moving forward and look forward to future updates. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Enjoy your day. All right, next up, we have Metro Regional System Facilities Plan, and I'd like to introduce Marta McGuire from Metro.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to engage with you today. Again, my name is Marta McGuire, and I'm Metro's Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department Director, and I have here with me Esty Siegel and Luis Sandoval, also from Metro. We are here to talk about the Regional System Facilities Plan that outlines investments to improve the garbage and recycling system. And we do have a short slide deck that we'd like to share, and I'll give Luis the opportunity to pull that up. And we have had the opportunity to engage with some of you both through the Metro Policy Advisory Committee and through the Metro Mayors Consortium. So some of this content will look familiar, but we appreciate having another opportunity to dive into this draft plan. So if we go to the next slide. Years ago, Metro Council adopted the 2030 Regional Waste Plan, which is our long-range plan for managing the region's reuse, recycling, and garbage system, with the key priorities listed here. And we partner with your communities to move this work forward. Today, we are here to discuss one of the key priorities of the plan that is focused on ensuring equitable and affordable services for everyone. To address this priority, Metro has been working on the Regional System Facilities Plan. The plan takes a holistic view at the garbage and recycling system. And I will share, when we were building the Regional Waste Plan that was adopted a few years ago, we heard significant feedback from Washington County residents about gaps in services. And so this plan that we're sharing today is designed to address those gaps. Next slide. Just for a little bit of context, when we use the term garbage and recycling system, it's really an all-inclusive term to refer to the number of facilities that make up the system that manages the waste and materials in the region. This includes materials that you can see on the left, such as garbage and recycling and hazardous waste. The graphic shows how these materials move through the system. Some may be picked up at the curb or taken directly to a facility. The System Facilities Plan is focused on facilities and services that support the transfer of materials to their final destination, including facilities that collect materials that may not be available curbside, like household hazardous waste. Access to services in the system are experienced differently by people throughout the region, and the current distribution of facilities means that some people have easy access to services, such as getting rid of large items, while others do not. Next slide. A good example of the current state of our system is our Metro South public transportation. This facility opened in April 1983, designed originally to host an incinerator. The facility was expected to handle up to 800 tons of waste a day. Fast forward to today, and Metro South processes more than 300,000 tons per year, with many days handling more than 1,000 tons per day. The challenges to this facility daily are significant, and we do our best at operating an overburdened facility in a safe and efficient manner. However, to keep valuable resources out of the landfill, we need more space to separate out recyclable, reusable, repairable items, and to ensure safety, including traffic flow and redevelopment of the site is needed. Metro South is just one example of how over the last 40 years, the garbage and recycling needs of the region have changed. Some people have easy access to disposal options that live close to transfer stations, but many in the region do not, as such in Washington County. And as the region grows, more investment is needed to ensure that everyone, no matter where they live, has access to garbage and recycling services. Next slide. We also know that we live in a place where people care about the environment and are willing to spend more time and resources to keep valuable resources out of the landfill. Here is a picture of a local recycling event hosted by James Recycling just last month. People waited more than half an hour to recycle items that may not be collected at the curb and paid $3 a bag. This is just one example of values in our region in practice. Next slide. To address the aging system and gaps, Metro Council directed us to complete a system facilities plan to take a holistic look at the region's facilities to identify where investments are needed to improve access to facilities for everyone. This plan is a 20-year vision, a roadmap for investment to identify facility and program investments for the region to pursue. It also calls out areas that need more study. Next slide. Over the last 18 months, Metro has engaged with local government, industry, community, and tribal governments across the region, hosted an international symposium, and engaged with Metro Council to develop a set of investments to address the gaps in the plan. This slide shows the 5 phases of engagement that we went through plan development, essentially building a chapter of the plan in each phase, starting with the values and outcomes. And we are now here at the draft plan. Next slide. You can think of the plan outline like a project map, and here you can see an outline of the plan with all the chapters that make up the plan. Today, we are here to give an overview of the investment strategy and financing approach. And with that, I will turn it over to Esty.
Thanks, Martha, and good afternoon. You can go to the next slide, and just want to give a quick recap of what we did to develop the plan. So after establishing the values and outcomes, the project team engaged in activities and research to identify the gaps in reuse, recycling, and garbage in the system, in the regional system. So 3 of the gaps that were identified include gaps in access, like Marta has mentioned. Residents in Washington County and East Multnomah County lack drop-off locations for recyclables, hazardous waste, and large reusable items. Secondly, facility gaps for collectors. Companies collecting waste face challenges related to access cost and disaster resilience for food waste, yard debris, and garbage. And third, needs of reuse organizations and businesses who require more warehouse space for sorting and storing items, as well as consistent funding to enhance collection and distribution of reusable and repairable items. So at the last fall's symposium, we presented 4 scenarios for project partners to consider and outline different approaches for Metro to address these identified gaps. The scenarios outline different ways that Metro could fill the gaps that were identified in phase 2, and you can see them on the right side of the screen here. Next slide. After the symposium and getting feedback from Metro Council, we heard strong support for what we call the distributed model. And this approach focuses on creating smaller facilities throughout the region to improve access to reuse, recycling, and hazardous waste services. Survey results showed that people appreciated elements from some of the other scenarios too, including, again, more support for existing reuse organizations and businesses, and improving safety and efficiencies at existing facilities. The benefits of this model include greater access to services, increased recycling rates, better handling of hazardous and hard to recycle materials, and opportunities for public-private partnerships. So the draft plan that Metro has developed aims to enhance public and commercial facilities, food waste processing, support reuse and repair organizations over the next 20 years. There are 4 key investment areas that you can see here: community drop-off depots, reuse and repair, organics, and commercial transfer stations. And I'm going to describe just a bit more about what falls under these investment areas, and you can read more details on each of them in the draft plan. So for community, the vision for community drop-off depots is to fill gaps that were identified by residents and small businesses, including providing more locations across the region to drop off items for reuse, recycling, hazardous waste, and self-haul garbage, all in one place. These facilities will be designed for public customers driving cars and small trucks apart from commercial haulers, and to be able to easily separate material for recovery, reuse, and to encourage waste reduction over sending garbage to landfill. This is an example here on the slide of a one-stop drop-off called an Eco Center in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada. Next slide, you can see the approximate location of the 6 community drop-off depots envisioned in the system facilities plan, and some of the modeling estimates for the drive times, recovery rates, and people to be served at these facilities as compared to the baseline today. And these, again, are detailed more in the draft plan that is now out. Next slide, please. For reuse and repair, the plan includes investments in 2 new types of facilities: a reuse warehouse and a reuse mall. Both projects would be planned and implemented in partnership with existing reuse businesses and organizations. And then a third investment in this area is a sustainable reuse funding program to support reuse businesses in recovering and diverting more materials from landfill. Next slide, please. Food represents the single largest component of the region's disposal waste stream and is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Metro Central plays a crucial role in transferring and pre-processing food waste before it reaches an end market. And this facility handles about 70% of the region's food waste. In our role, it is critical to maintain a contamination-free system to produce high-quality compost and avoid environmental and health risks from microplastics. So to improve the transfer and processing capacity of organics in the region, Metro will continue to invest in Metro Central as a regional hub for receiving residential and commercial organics from haulers. Next slide. As part of this plan, Metro will also develop public-private partnerships to support additional organics hubs in areas of the region where there are the greatest gaps. Next slide. Council expressed support for repurposing over time the 2 Metro commercial transfer stations, Metro Central and Metro South, to focus on providing the services that are more challenging to provide for the private sector, such as self-haul and organics transfer services. Because the plan is proposing to convert Metro South to a community drop-off depot, this would create a service gap for commercial haulers in the southern part of the region. So to fill the gap, Metro would take a phased approach to seek to authorize a new commercial transfer station or develop a public-private partnership to build a new facility in the southern part of the region. Next slide. So there's 2 important areas that need more time for research, assessment, and discussion: wet waste tonnage flow and private facility regulation. The plan includes 2 actions in this area. First is to study the impact of lowering or removing Metro tonnage guarantee, including evaluation of the current wet waste tonnage allocation program in the region. And secondly, to assess options for private facility regulation to best serve the public interest. These actions are again detailed more in the plan and will begin when the plan is adopted by council. And a couple more slides here. This map presents a visual of the facilities and investment projects proposed in the draft plan. It also summarizes some of the overall benefits of the plan. And just a note that facilities outlined with a gray circle and a dashed line on the map do not have a specific location determined yet. They're in a general area that we believe we would look towards siting a facility. Next slide. So the proposed set of investments are estimated to cost about $273 million over the 20-year implementation period. For comparison, the original scenarios that the project presented at the symposium last fall ranged from $280 million to over $800 million. Next slide. So the investments will be financed through revenue bonds with debt paid off over 20 years. The estimated increase in the garbage bill for a typical single-family household in the region over the next 2 decades of plan implementation is between $1.50 and $2 per month on average and in today's dollars. This stays within what we heard people would be willing to pay for increased services after last fall's symposium and the survey that we put out. It's important to note that, again, that this is a 20-year vision plan and the specific costs and timing of each project will be determined in Metro's annual budgeting process. The annual budget development and fee setting will be guided by the solid waste fee policy and with input from the Regional Waste Advisory Committee. So wanted to leave you with what's next. There are 2 ways to provide feedback on the draft plan. You can leave a public comment or take an online survey. Both opportunities can be found on the project's website here on the slide and will be open, have been open since October 1st and will be open for the rest of the month of October. And input received will help shape the final plan that will be considered for adoption by Metro Council later this year and set the foundation for future work to make the plan a reality. So I'd like to just leave you with a couple of questions to get discussion going. Now I'll turn it back to you. Well, the questions are what questions do you have about the draft plan? And then is there specific input that you would like us to share with Metro Council on the draft plan?
Sure. Thank you, Marta. And Estee, really appreciate the presentation. Before I give Mayor Wenzel the floor, you know, I know we all know an election is coming up. And we also know that there's a timeline for the adoption of this plan before some of the RWAC seats are actually full and seated. So I'm just kind of curious what Metro's process will be, or how will they be reaching out to local jurisdictions, you know, to ask for these seats to be filled, or is this something you're going to come back to the WCCC and, you know, ask for an endorsement for a member on the RWAC?
Yeah, so just for context, we have the Regional Waste Advisory Committee that provides guidance to Metro Council on the implementation both of the Regional Waste Plan that I mentioned at the start, as well as, if adopted, the System Facilities Plan and overseeing budget and fees for the implementation of this work. This is a long-standing committee, at least for the last 2 decades, I want to say. It was recently updated this summer in terms of composition, including additional seats to represent important partners in our system, including some of the facilities that were in that chart, the private transfer stations and nonprofit reuse organizations, and also transitioning the current local government seats to elected officials. So we are currently have nominations open for the local government seats and have received some of those to date. There are 5 seats dedicated to local government. So Washington County currently holds a seat, as does the city of Troutdale. So we've shared that information with city managers, as well as other engagements that we've done to date. And so I'm happy to provide a follow-up information. The appointment process is written in Metro Code. So local governments must nominate, their executive must form the nomination, and then Metro Council President Peterson makes the appointments as approved by Metro Council.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Follow-up would be great. Thank you, Marta.
Sorry, probably longer explanation.
No, that's okay, but it's important. It's important. Details matter. Mayor Wenzel.
If I jump offline, I apologize. My class is going to start in 3 minutes, I think. My question had to follow up with what Terry was saying too. I'm just wondering if engagement, is there a schedule that Metro is going to come present at each of our councils as a way also to get public comment? And if not, I would like to schedule that. I think it would be very beneficial for a little blurb in their waste management bill, either online through email or in paper, saying, hey, this is something we're proposing. Come learn and hear about it at this council meeting in these cities. I think it's just good for everybody to be transparent and get engagement out, because a lot of times I don't think just putting it in a bill like, hey, here's the survey is really going to elicit a lot of engagement, which is two-way back and forth. So allowing a public comment period in each city, I think would be helpful.
Absolutely. And we did share information at the staff level with city managers and county administrators for opportunities for a local conversation. So we'll be at the Beaverton City Council tomorrow. So we're happy to do that engagement. And then we also have a local government communications toolkit that we can provide to staff that has kind of all the messaging built, if you want to put it in an insert with all the links that I can send as a follow-up to this meeting. So you have that as well.
All right, Mayor Rosner.
Well, thanks for the presentation. And you're right, I've seen this several times before. And so you probably know, I'm going to repeat some of the questions just for the wider audience and make some comments. I remember when you came to the MMC and presented those four scenarios, and just going back to that meeting, I'm just being totally candid and honest here. It was really hard to understand the cost factors that went into those scenarios because they just did not make sense. And I'm very worried about the costs that we're about to incur here. And are we truly leveraging private partnerships to the best advantage possible? Because, if you think about it, the transfer station is 4 walls, a roof, and a couple of bulldozers to shove stuff into a truck. So, I just want to make sure that we're spending our dollars wisely. I'm also concerned about the fee increases, because I'm sure when those questions were asked of the community, it wasn't within the context of the fee increases we're seeing related to that. Tipping fees are up 40% over the last 4 to 5 years. And has caused significant increases in our fee structures in our communities. And I think if we did a scientific poll, not polls that are spread by emails, that we'd have a different sentiment coming from our community. And if you remember, well, some of us might remember, we're old enough, some are not, but the original transfer stations like Metro South, they were paid for through bonds that were paid paid down based on guaranteeing trips to those stations for the local haulers. But once those bonds were paid off, the fees never went down, right? So we kept those fee structures in place. So, what's the plan once the bonds are paid off, or are those fees going to come down? I think is another important thing that I'm trying to understand in this whole process. And then I just want to echo what Mayor Lanahan said. I think it's really important for the RWAC to do a thorough review of this before Metro Council takes any actions. And when I say that, the RWAC with the newly seated positions, and to make sure that we have really good city and hauler representation on that committee. I think that's just incredibly important if we're going to be investing this type of money in the system. And then my last comment, and I'm sorry if I'm trending to the negative side, but this is a passion area for me. But one of the values that I didn't see represented in the plan was looking at our costs, why are our costs so high compared to the region around us? I can take a truckload, a full-size pickup load of household debris to a transfer station in Yamhill County, and it's $27. If I try to do it in the metro area, it's close to $100. So are we really looking at, did we do an analysis of the regions around us and what their cost structures look like and what our cost structures look like, and really finding ways to lower costs, not just raise new revenue and spend more money? So I will get off my soapbox. I know, Marta, you've heard me before on this, but I think it was important to bring this up in the context of this meeting. So thank you.
No, I really appreciate the comments and questions, Mayor Rosner, and just a very brief response on a couple of topics. I do, with regards to costs and the costs that you saw around the scenarios, this is very much a concept plan. So we did our best to estimate with as accurate assumptions as possible the cost ranges of what is there, and we're happy to dive more deeply into that information with you. But as with any concept plan, when you're looking at large infrastructure investments like this, that concept plan provides direction for a very detailed implementation plan that would then undergo another level of scrutiny and review and decision points before it's enacted. So just at the cost level. The other thing I do want to make a distinction of as people look at the plan is the difference between a transfer station and a community depot. So what is in this plan really reflects the values around public-private partnerships and Metro stepping in to the spaces where it is more challenging for the private sector. So the community depots are focused on recyclable material and self-haul garbage, which is different than commercial transfer stations. So I do kind of want to make that distinction. There was a path that Metro was going down pre the system facilities plan that focused on building full service transfer stations, one in Cornelius and one in Metro South. And this plan is very different from what that original concept was. It takes a very measured approach to costs. It reflects that value around public-private partnerships, which you'll see in each of those different investment area. And lastly, just with regards to fees over time, historically, if you look at Metro fees, they have been stable and raised pretty much on average with inflation, including 2 years where fees actually went down. Where you're seeing the significant increase is when Metro froze fees in 2020. And then you saw a significant increases in the years following that because we went into had to move into our reserves to prevent an operational deficit. So I'll have the opportunity to talk more with you about that at the upcoming City of Sherwood work session. And I'm happy to share information on the history of Metro fees with this group. We have put some information together on that around how those have changed over time. And definitely in terms of engagement, I will share that our industry partners have been closely engaged in each phase of plan development. We did interviews with them. So the composition of our WAC, although there'll be new seats, we've engaged representatives that will be sitting on the new community committee through each phase of this plan development. So just kind of want to reinforce that as well, but appreciate your feedback, and we'll definitely bring that back to Metro Council.
Yeah, and my comment about the fees were more in the context of when you ask people if they're up for more fees, giving them the overall context of what's going on is a part of that, not just a very narrow, would you pay a little extra to be able to make it easier to recycle? So I just think that's really important. And my standard line, you'll be hearing me for a long time, is scientific polls, please.
I heard that earlier.
Yes.
I heard that earlier as well. So I appreciate that feedback.
Awesome. Thank you, Marta. Yeah. And Luis.
That's gonna be my my go-to mantra here for the next couple of weeks. Scientific polls, please. I love it. I love it. We had a couple other hands up. They're down now, but I just still wanted to make sure anyone else have any comments or questions. Mayor Delane, you're awfully quiet on this topic. Mayor Lube, unmute yourself if you would, please.
Oh, Mayor Delane can go first.
You called me out, so yeah, Marta and I had a really good chance to talk after the Metropolitan Mayor's meeting, and but I think the challenge for the larger audience here, as Tim said, is really to look at can we generate any of these services across our entire area within the fee structure that's already being collected, right? There's millions and millions of dollars being collected already. Could we look at it the other way around? Instead of increasing fees, look at what it would take to support these enhanced services across the regional area so everybody has access to these kind of services at a zero-based budget without any additional increases. That would be really my big comment. And then to Tim's point, I won't climb up board a soapbox, but I think we need to do some partner analysis and really understand if the other counties, and explicitly to your point, Marta, about not being a commercial hauler, but like my experiences with the both down at Woodburn and at Deschutes County, if they can do a self-haul transfer station where I can get in and out of there for a little over $20 for a truckload versus what we're seeing in the metro region, I think there's some maybe best practices to understand and see. And if it is labor costs, then maybe we need to talk about that too, because you and I talked to extent about the possibility of labor costs, then maybe this isn't the right business for Metro to be in. Maybe it is for looking for somebody else to be able to do it, and looking at what these other communities are being able to do. Maybe some of our best practice analysis with those would help us understand how they're able to do it at such a reduced cost and provide high quality customer service that people aren't scared to go to. They're happy to go to that experience and get it done. So I think that'd be the comments I'd share with you. Thank you.
Mayor Lube, I'll let you take us out.
Thank you. So I have a question just as far as the system that we're setting up, especially with these stations for individuals who can come. I'm just wondering sort of what's the fundamental difference, or maybe it's the same offer just in a couple of different ways. So, here in Washington County, we have a couple of different haulers who offer Recycle Plus. I know Ridwell offers other services for people who don't have things like Recycle Plus. So is the intent of this just to be for people who maybe don't have this service and want to drive to drop these items off? Because it feels like a lot of infrastructure to be building and a huge program to build for something that, all of my community members already have access to, nor do they want to drive somewhere to drop it off. And I think about all those extra car trips and all those things when we have, a service that's already sort of taking care of that. And then, are you taking styrofoam? Because I think that's the one thing in my community that we have a gap for.
I can start.
That's a great question. Oh, go ahead, Esty.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's actually the whole idea is to increase access for everybody and to keep these self-haul, the community drop-off depots open for 5 to 6 days a week for permanent hours, because some of those Replus services and Ridwell services are only accessible to people who can afford those services. They're not open to the general public, right? Unless you sign up. And the idea is that we focus on reducing waste at these this network of depots, and that they take styrofoam, they take household hazardous waste, they take batteries, paint, mattresses, some of the Recycling Modernization Act materials that are going to be required to be taken at depots, that it's actually a one-stop shop that people can bring many materials to and get rid of at the same time. You're correct that it won't benefit everyone, those who don't have a car, but there are partnering with reuse organizations who actually are able to connect some pickups is part of our plan and why the partnerships with the reuse sector. But it really is, it's actually an increase, it's trying to increase access to one-stop drop-offs that are convenient and accessible for a whole host of materials. And I can pass it on to my others on my team to, if I like.
I think you covered it. And I think just to put a finer point on, and there are some materials that simply cannot be collected at the curb. Household hazardous waste, for example, lithium batteries, other materials that are problematic from an environmental and risk standpoint to be collected curbside. And some materials that aren't included in some of the Ridwell and Plus programs that folks would have the opportunity to recycle for free at these depots.
Well, you say recycle for free, but we're all paying for it. So, I mean,
as that came out of my mouth,
sometimes you want to take those words back, but yes.
So you are correct. This is something that all the regional residents pay for, but what this plan would do would be to increase the access to it, because there are, particularly in Washington County, that does not have our current public transfer stations have smaller depots within them for recyclable materials, and then also the household hazardous waste that are at those sites. So that is something that is a service gap in Washington County and Far East County for those services. But thank you for, I knew it as it came out that I should not have said that.
Thank you.
A couple more minutes. Mayor Rosner.
Thank you. I'm curious if you've looked at PROs at all. I feel like we are light years behind Europe on this, where they have producer responsibility organizations, and the cost of collection and actually recycling and reusing recyclable materials is put on the producers, not on the communities. And I feel like we're going backwards here. We're putting all the costs on the communities as opposed to the producers of these materials. And some of those programs in Europe have not only been successful in covering those collection costs, but there's people don't understand that a lot of our recycling metrics are measured on how much we collect, not on how much actually gets recycled, which is a far lower number. And those PRO programs really encourage that they're actually recycling the material. And I'm just curious, I know Oregon recently passed some legislation around PROs, but we are so far behind. And is Metro having conversations about that and how we catch up with some of these programs that Europe has been leading on?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, it is something that we have been discussing with the newly approved Recycle Modernization Act, which is the most recent extended producer responsibility program. But Oregon is, although the U.S. as a whole might be behind Europe, Oregon is actually ahead of states in the United States in extended producer responsibility. So we have that for electronics, paint, and bottles. So in the modeling, the cost that you're seeing in the cost estimates that we are producing for this project are conservative in the sense that we assume no funding from those organizations, simply because we don't know how much material these depots would get, and they compensate facilities on a per ton basis, right? And so some of the materials that are expected to be collected at depots from the Recycling Modernization Act are small quantities. So we cannot reasonably expect them to pay for 100% of a facility that only collects, the materials that flow through that facility are only 6% or less than that covered by that program, right? So it will be a combination. And the project team and Metro is in conversations with Circular Action Alliance and is following the process for how to get compensation for building and maintaining these facilities in the future, and especially as new programs come online. And then at the same time, I do want to. It is a little. We also get the comment that producers pay, but then they transfer the cost to consumers. So it's all ultimately the consumer that pays. So there's always this perspective that it doesn't matter where we put the costs, we all always end up paying. We the consumers, right? But it is something that we've been following very closely.
Great, thank you for that.
Mayor Callaway, I'm going to let you be the last question or comment for this topic. We need to move on.
Okay, quick question. So will it be free? So if I drive and drop stuff off, will it be free? I know we're paying for the facility. So then do we also pay to drop it off? Or will that be included in the, payment for, the facility, the $2 a month, I think, whatever is going to be charged?
So for recyclables and household hazardous waste, it would be the same as it is today at our transfer stations where folks can drop that off, I will say, with no additional cost. That is funded through the regional system fee, which is charged on every ton of garbage, as well as for reuse items. So materials that have a second life that can go on. The facility, the depots will also accept self-haul garbage, and that would be charged a pay-as-you-throw, similar to what we have at the transfer stations right now.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And what it wouldn't have is commercial waste. So the big haulers that go through is what these depots would not have. Those would flow to the nearest or the company commercial waste company.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Estee, Marta, and Luis, thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. Where are we? Now we're at the JPAC agenda.
All right. So I'll jump in with that briefly. So it's also in your packet. So the one action that we'll be taking is the regional transportation priorities and funding, which we have talked about before at previous JPAC meetings. We'll hear the same connecting communities transit study that we heard from Allie. We will also, one of the things that I guess I'm curious about is updates from the JPAC chair, which is Metro staff review of the Step 1A bond program project. So we don't know if that's going to, be sharing of some potential cuts on this project list or not. It's not in the packet at this point. So it is going to be something that's updated by the chair at the meeting. So beyond that, that's on the agenda, and you are more than welcome to join. It is a virtual meeting at 7:30, so you're more than welcome to join us.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor Callaway. Commissioner Fye, did you need to add anything? Just wanted to double check. Nope. Okay. MPAC, Mayor Rosner.
Thank you, Chair. As we talked about this in our last meeting, but in the last impact meeting was mainly focused on the urban growth report and the Sherwood West proposal. There was a motion passed to recommend to the Metro Council that they approve the Sherwood West expansion as presented by Sherwood West, basically just hold Sherwood West accountable to the concept plan that they put in place. There was another motion that was passed recommending Metro Council accept the high growth rate forecast that's in the current urban growth report draft. I think there was a lot of concern that with housing and industrial land need, that the urban growth report is underestimating that need by a significant amount. So that's why there was a request that the Metro Council adopt that at the high level. And oddly enough, there was a conversation about the regional waste plan and making sure that that's reviewed by the newly constituted RWAC before it's adopted. So that was discussed in impact. So the official agenda for the next impact meeting hasn't come out yet. So I don't have a lot for you on that, but I don't think there's anything major coming up in that meeting.
All right.
Steve, did I miss anything on that?
Good. Thank you, Mayor Rosner. Let's see, other business. I know I was trying to keep us on time. I think we did a good job, trying to be respectful of everyone's day. The December 9th meeting, Mayor, Councilor Rosenthal, you're muted. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to Mayor Rosner said is there was also a motion by Mark Shull, Commissioner Shull, to do a deeper dive after the Sherwood issue is resolved on industrial lands readiness and to create a special task force to do that. So that'll probably be, that won't happen until early next year.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, that was an important one. I missed that. Yep.
Thank you very much. All right. December 9th meeting. So we have a conflict with that particular date. There is the Oregon Business Summit that's happening at the Convention Center on that date. And so what we would like to do is shift the WCCC meeting from the 9th to 11th at the same time from noon to 2. And hopefully that will work with your schedules. I don't know if you can kind of double check them now and give us give Stephen a thumbs up. That would be great.
So the Wednesday, not the following Monday?
Correct.
The idea would be JPACT will meet that Thursday. So ideally we'd like to meet before the JPACT meeting, but it may not be essential. So if there may be other dates that are better suited, we can take a look at other dates too. And we could go ahead and have the meeting on the 9th as well. We just felt that some of the mayors may want to attend that meeting.
Would you, Stephen, be willing just to kind of put out another email real quick, after this meeting or something so folks can chime in and let you know? That'd be great.
Happy to do that.
Stephen, it doesn't work for me, but I'll just check with my alternate.
Sounds good. All right. And Mayor Lube, I'm wondering if you or Mayor Callaway, I think Mayor Wenzel dropped off for class, could maybe give us an update for the R1 Act?
Yeah, sure. Last week we had our R1 Act meeting. The meeting, for the most part, was a pretty robust discussion on the STIF applications. And I think there was kind of concerns or voices about what is the Region 1 Act's role in this process. And what it came down to, as far as timing is concerned, we either wanted to give a thumbs up or thumbs down to all of the plans that were submitted, just due to trying to figure out mathematically, like, how much STIF funds are there? How much is there in Region 1? And people were trying to figure out if we should do a calculation. And we ended up just saying all of them are worthy of being pushed forward. And regardless of how much money we are putting forward, I think it just speaks to how much transportation funding is needed, and that actually reducing it might give the impression that we don't need that much money. So there was good things about all of the applications, and so we gave them thumbs up for all of them to go forward for the OTC to have that discussion.
Great.
Mayor Callaway, did I miss anything?
Seeing as how I missed the meeting, you didn't miss anything. But thanks for pointing that out.
All right, thanks, Mayor Lou. Appreciate that. And then I guess lastly, is there anything, any committee or city or county updates that we need to be aware of and or future topics for our agenda list? Nope. Crickets. Councilor Rosenthal, you still have your hand up. Is that from before or do you have something else? Okay, thank you. All right. Hearing none. I'm gonna then say that we adjourn right at 2 o'clock. I did it.
Thank you for chairing. Great job.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good day. See you later.